Hi, my name is Randy Bonds, and this session is moving from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. A little about myself real quick. I've worked with the city of Yakima for about 10 years. I'm married, I have 2 kids, 2 cats, and in this crazy time of COVID, we've also added an exchange student from Spain because we're crazy, like I said. My Instagram handle, Twitter handle is there on the bottom. If you wish to contact me, that's a good and easy way. You can also use any of the apps from the conference here. So let's dive right into it. First thing I want you to get into your mental thinking here is it is different. Yes, ArcGIS Pro is different from ArcMap, and that's a good thing. Let's not try to see it as a negative thing, but a good thing. And let's dive right in. First of all, just do some quick comparisons. ArcGIS Pro is 64-bit. It uses your graphics card. It's modern. Projects are a big difference. The ribbon's a big difference. Editing is totally different. 3D is a huge difference. Its integration with ArcGIS Online and Portal is phenomenal, and the design opportunities you have are really, really cool. So let's dive right in. And we're gonna look at the screenshot here, and we're seeing 6 new sections in ArcGIS Pro. The first up being the ribbon. Something that's really cool about the ribbon, your tools are all up there, but it also is dynamic. You can see this little orange area here. You can see that it says feature layer, appearance, labeling, and data. So it's dynamic based on what's selected over in number 4, which is the context pane. Now that we've gone out of order, we'll go back to number 2. 2 is the project that you're save as, and any other settings for your project. The third area here on our screen is the map or scene view area. It's really great for looking at your map and your scene. You can also tie things together there, and we'll talk about that more here in a second. Number 4, again, is your contents pane. It's very, 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 very similar to ArcMap. It should be familiar to you, and you should love it. Number 5 here is our attribute table. Something I think is really cool is before it used to always kind of pop up, and you could dock it if you wanted to, but the default behavior here is that it is docked on the bottom. You can also open multiple attribute tables at once, which is really great when I'm just trying to flip between data and explore data real quick in that table view. And number 6, which also should be very familiar to you, is your catalog pane. And that is almost identical to ArcMap, so it shouldn't be that terribly different for you. Now that we've gone through those, let's just jump right into projects. And the reason I jump into projects to start is that's kind of our base of what we're doing. It would be easy to import all of our MXDs. I've got them all over the place, all of my old ones, because I've moved and we're good now. But it would be really simple and easy just to import them and move on and like, hey, I moved to ArcGIS Pro. But I want to challenge you to think slightly different. MXDs were kind of just one map. And that's what I had. And sometimes I turn off layers, turn on layers, and do whatnot to them. What I want you to think of that's so different in ArcGIS Pro is projects. So have all your maps, all your layouts, any of your other image items and other things you need, Python scripts, your tools, whatever else, all in your project. So that your project covers more than just one map, but it covers really a project or a department. You know, I work at a city, so I think of departments, and sometimes departments don't have a whole lot. They don't ask for GIS help that often. So I have a project just their department's got all their stuff in it. And then there's departments like planning that have a new project every week, so they've got their own projects in each and every one, because that just makes it easier to organize the data. It also makes it easier for the person who comes after me. And that person who comes after me or person who's working on a project with me can just open it up and we can work on all of the same data. Also, I recommend if you got any REST services, if you're serving like that in an enterprise GIS environment, it's good to have them in there too. Again, they're defined as maps. So you add a map and name it the right way there. And it's really nice to just have it in there ready to go. So next up, we'll talk about the ribbon. We touched on this slightly as we looked at the initial screenshot. Every tool is in the ribbon. And that's really key to remember. That's all are in the ribbon. And there are a lot of tools in ArcGIS Pro, just like there were a lot of tools in ArcMap. And personally, I think it's organized a lot better. Although it took some time to get used to, in the end, I find myself being able to jump around much quicker now than I could in the old style. And it's dynamic based on what's selected in the contents pane. So again, our left-hand pane there, if we have a feature layer selected, there'll be options for different things I can do specifically with that feature layer, which is really nice because it doesn't always have to be shown, but when I need it, it's there. Next up is editing. And personally, I think editing is 1,000 times easier in ArcGIS Pro. It's just a more clean way to do editing. You don't have to start editing and stop editing. That's all gone. Edits happen and then you save them when you're done, which is really nice. You can see here on the editing ribbon some of the options, but I want to highlight one in particular. That is number 4. And I think this is something that is easy to overlook, but it's just right there in front of you as well. When I can't find a tool or I can't find an option that I had in ArcMap, and not everything in ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap is one-to-one, but a lot of them are. So when you can't find it, look for that little arrow with the kind of half border on it and take a look at it. And there's more stuff underneath there. It's always nice to see what's under there and you can see more stuff. The other one that I often had a hard time finding was the attributes when I'm trying to just edit attributes. If you view an attribute table and start editing, it's just in editing mode. It's ready to go. So you can edit it without clicking the edit ribbon, but then having to go back and go to the edit ribbon to save it, which can trip some people up. It tripped me up. Next one is 3D. 3D is not available in ArcMap. ArcGIS Pro is a 3D environment. That's why it makes such heavy usage of your graphics card, of your GPU. One thing I think is really, really cool is you can view 2D and 3D at the same time. So you can split your scene and map view side by side and connect them together, link them, and it'll link the views together and you can move things around, but still be seeing it both a 2D context and a 3D context. Something one of my favorite cartographers, Kenneth Field, said is start adding Z values to your data now. And I thought this was kind of silly at first, but now I'm seeing that as more and more things move to 3D and have the option of having that extra Z value, it's really worth having in our points, our lines, and our polygons, just having it there, even if we're not using it right now and you're editing in 2D and it doesn't have a value in there essentially, it's still worth having as something in the future. The next step is how tightly integrated ArcGIS Online and Portal are with ArcGIS Pro. My personal favorite one, even though it's number 3 on my list here, is the ability to share data. It just makes publishing data that much easier. It makes everyone a data publisher, which is really cool. It makes it so nice to be able to get our data out there. And in the time where transparency in government should be just huge, this just makes it so much easier for us to get our data out there. The next thing is that it's just so easy to add data from the Living Atlas. I needed some restaurants for a project I was working on, went and looked at the Living Atlas. It had all the data I needed. Oftentimes we're asked for demographic data based on council districts. We're a city with 7 councils, districts, and that's something that gets asked all the time. They want updated information. Well, luckily it's all there, right there in ArcGIS Online in the Living Atlas. It's really cool how often Esri updates stuff in there, because I don't have to do the work going and finding data and then taking zebra files or Lord knows what and having to bring it in. It's just there and it just works, and it's just so nice to be able to do that. When I enrich a layer, it's just there, and then all of a sudden I've got all the data I need for that later. It's really, really great. Next up is the design possibilities. There's more design possibilities than ever. You can do a lot with vector tiles. I encourage you to dive in. There's a million things online about vector tiles. And then styles, and this is one of my personal favorites. So for a project or even for an organization, you can throw in styles that say, this is our mapping style. This is our colors. This is our symbology. This is all we want right on our map. And it makes it really cool and really easy to put it all together. Also, there are styles just out there. They're on ArcGIS Online. I know John Nelson often publishes them. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of the crazy things that John Nelson, I'm pretty sure, just sits around and thinks up the most awesome, crazy, wild maps he can think of, and they're just so amazing. And I want to highlight a couple here. First of all, before John Nelson's, this is one I did for a map and app contest. You can see it's a map, but I've replaced the polygon with some corkboard, put some push pins on there rather than our points, and I added some pictures. This is a utility box art project we have. There are actually quite a few more boxes now. We're up to 17. So I'd have to reimagine this map a little because it'd get a little messy, but that is a project I've worked on. And this is one of John Nelson's map with a really cool north arrow. His graticules are really neat, but it really makes Panama stand out. And it's just really cool how maybe you don't always need north exactly up straight, but then the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean are still north justified, so to speak, but then the other things on the map aren't. So the things that are most important are still really easy to see. And I really like how, one, just how pretty it is. But all the things it could do, including the inset map with the vignette up there, there's just so many really, really neat things about this map. Here's another one that it took me back. I don't know how many of you went to Sunday school when you were little, but I was a Sunday school kid, and this just took me back to those felt boards in Sunday school. He did a felt and tiling here, and it looks really cool. It's just really neat. It's out there and wild, and I love it. Here's another version of that with some topography, and it's just really cool. This is one I thought was interesting. Is that you can export essentially a movie out of ArcGIS Pro looking at temporal items in a map. And I thought this was really, really cool for sea surface temperature. And although he doesn't spell out the months, it's really easy to figure out what's going on and just jump right into it. I think it's a really neat map, a really creative way to think of things. So now let's jump into the tips and tricks section. And this is one of my favorites, and I think hopefully you can walk away with some really cool tips if you already haven't learned some neat things. But these are some of the things that tripped me up and now I'm a pro at, but it's just something I really want you to jump on. And I'm going to move my face here because it's in the way. So symbology is no longer in the properties pop-up. Now, that's where it was in ArcMap, but it's not there. If you right-click and choose symbology under feature layer, that's where it is. It's not under properties anymore. And for me, that makes more sense. Symbology is its own thing, and it's so complex that it isn't necessarily a property of the map or a property of that feature class. So I think that makes a lot more sense to me personally, but it's just in a different place. The other one is the all other values. And if you have your symbology open, but again, that's right-clicking your feature layer and choosing symbology, you can then see this over in the right pane. And they show all of their values. That's something I didn't know where it was at. I couldn't find it. I needed to see it for whatever project I was working. If you click more in that pane and then click show other values, it'll then show up for you. So that's just a nice tip for finding that thing, where'd it move to. Next one, and this is something different. If you've seen my discussion on moving from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro before, I used to really like the use of templates, and now I've changed my mind and I'm going with favorites. You can add all of your favorite connections into ArcGIS Pro. And that's nice, but every time I open a new project, I gotta go get my new connections. And to be honest, I just liked how it was there in ArcMap. It was something that was easy. Well, here's how you do it. So you add a favorite, so you can see in the left screenshot there, I have taken and added my web.ste, which is kind of my catch-all geodatabase. I've added it as a favorite. So I just clicked add item there, and then I've added it as a favorite. And now, once it's been added, if I right-click on it, there is an option, and this is where the magic happens, add to new projects. And I think that's really great, because what it does, when I close ArcGIS Pro and open it, even if I open it without a template and I'm just needed to jump into something real quick and I just need to look at something in some geodata really quick, which happens all the time, all my connections are there and I can just go over and see them in my project. I don't have to do anything anymore. It makes it really, really nice. Geoprocessing history is another thing that I use quite often. I have collisions data that I get from the state, Washington State, every month. It comes in as a CSV and I have to import it in. I do all that with some Python scripts and get it into my geodatabase. And so that's all wonderful and all. And I probably honestly could do the things I'm doing over that you see happening over and over again in this history. I could probably go put them into that Python script. But for some reason, either I don't trust it or I just don't want to go into it. But I need to take each of those points and say which council district they're in and change the attribute to match. It comes in blank, and so I have to come change it because the state doesn't know what council district is which. And so I calculate the field after selecting it by location. You can see I just do it over and over again, but it's nice that it's in there in the history. I can see what I've done. I can jump back over and grab it. This is one of my favorite things to use just all the time. Our next tip, let's go ahead. Well, that's all the tips. Just joking, but I want you to see my sources here. Adventures in Mapping, that's John Nelson's site. You can go check it out. Esri has a really great migration guide, as you can see there. And then there was another blog that I looked at about the top 5 differences. I'm going to leave these up for a minute because I really want you to use them as a tool. I can also put them in the chat here. And finally, I'd just like to thank you for coming, for moving from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. If you have any questions, feel free to Twitter or Instagram me. You can also feel free to ask questions here in the chat. And if you need anything else, please let me know. I did not put it on a slide, but I want to remind you that next year, Yakima is hosting our Northwest GIS conference. We will be very excited, very glad to have you come and join us. I hope that you can make the trip out here to sunny Yakima, drink some of our beer, do some of our hiking, check out some of our wine. We really do have some great things here. We're a hidden gem of the state of Washington, and I hope to see you out here when we can meet in person again. I can't wait to have face-to-face interactions with everybody in a year. Hope to see you then. See you in Yakima. Thanks for joining me today. It's been great.